Bill Rep. Dorr, which is House Bill 1769. Maggie, would you please brief the bill?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, Maggie Douglas, committee staff. Before you is House Bill 1769 concerning community municipal corporations. This bill comes to you with a vote of 71-27 from the House floor. As a brief background, community municipal corporations, or as I'll refer to as CMCs, may be formed as an unincorporated area if an unincorporated area is annexed to a city or town by election. A CMC is governed by a 5-member community council, and members are elected concurrently with the annexation. The annexing city must provide administrative, policy, and planning staff for the community council. A community council has the authority to prevent application of certain ordinances and resolutions pertaining to land, buildings, or structures. And this includes comprehensive plans, zoning ordinances, conditional use permits, special exceptions or variances, subdivision ordinances, subdivision plats, and planned unit development. A community municipal corporation may make recommendations on proposed comprehensive plans or other proposals that directly or indirectly affects property or land within the service area, as well as provide a forum for consideration of the conservation, improvement, or development of property. There are currently 2 community municipal corporations in the state, the Houghton Community Council of Kirkland and the East Bellevue Community Council. The bill before you provides for the expiration of CMCs and prohibits these CMCs from forming in the future. The bill goes into effect 90 days after sine die. A fiscal note is available. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator Fortunato has a question.
You're on mute, Senator.
Is there any provision in this bill to take into account the elected terms of some of these representatives that are on these boards? I know some of them have just been elected.
Yeah, there's no provisions that you're mentioning in the bill as it stands. The expiration date is either 4 years from the election or 30 days after the bill goes into effect, whichever is sooner.
4 years after which election? Their election or?
It's 4 years after the authorization of the CMC.
Okay.
And so the members are elected concurrently. So this would go into effect 4 years after their election.
All right. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Rep. Dorr, tell us about this bill.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. This bill basically seeks to get rid of these community councils. They've been in place for over 50 years. They were originally put in place to ease annexation, but now these singular communities are able to veto the land use policies of the entire city, thereby potentially and sometimes pushing growth targets onto the rest of the city. They cost the city a lot of money in legal fees and community outreach, and they vote for themselves. Nobody else gets to vote except those communities to reinstate every 4 years. And so I think it's time for those to go in the idea of fairness and democracy. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Rep. Dorr? Senator Fortunato.
So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just following up. I'm getting a lot of emails on this, and I guess I think that people wish they were in the 31st district, but apparently that's not the case. Focusing on the fact that some of these members were elected like 6 months ago or something. I mean, I'm getting these emails, so I'm trying to go through it, but they're saying, hey, we've been just elected 6 months ago. Our term is 4 years. Can this be extended to the end of our term? And I was sort of unclear with Maggie's explanation. So would you be?
Is that for the private sponsor, Senator Fortunato, or is that?
Yeah. So the question comes in is, would you consider an amendment that would simply extend it to the end of their term? So when their terms are over, that would be it.
I would prefer not to. I think their time has passed. They keep electing themselves every 4 years. It's unending if you go by that strategy. So in my view, they just need to go. It's undone.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to call up Councilmember Claudia Balducci, Councilmember Kelly Curtis, and Mayor Penny Sweet. After that, we'll hear from Karen Levinson, Larry Toldetti, and Rick Whitney. And I'll let you know that we had lots of testifiers not wishing to testify today. Not lots of folks signing in not wishing to testify. 442 pro and 347 con.
All right. I am going to let people know that we have 21 people signed in to testify. We only have 40 minutes left. I would ask people to speak to the bill and be brief, and we'll go from there. Welcome, Councilmember Balducci. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for hearing us today. I represent District 6 in East King County. My name is Claudia Balducci, and my district includes both of the remaining community council areas. But more importantly, I have lived in the East Bellevue Community Council area for 30 years. I love my neighborhood. I was a founder of our neighborhood association, but I am here to urge a yes vote to sunset my community council. As you've heard, these were established over 50 years ago, around the same time that Richard Nixon took office. Surely the purpose of encouraging a smooth and respectful transition to a new city has long since been met. Today, mostly what the community councils do is make it difficult to create critically needed housing. The EBCC recently vetoed a land use code establishing where and how emergency homeless shelter could be sited in our city. This code was adopted after years of intensive public process by the city, but my neighborhood, through our community council, got to say, no, put that somewhere else. Both community councils have vetoed changes intended to allow more badly needed workforce housing. Community councils make it even more difficult for local government to respond to the state's housing and homelessness crisis, which is especially acute in East King County. They are inherently undemocratic, giving some neighborhoods a second bite at the apple on land use decisions while the rest of the city only gets one bite. And although they are elected, they're elected by voters who are essentially being asked, do you want to keep your special power and extra vote? The rest of the city doesn't get a say. Our cities must work with their constituents, but there shouldn't be special no-go areas. We are and should be all in this together. It is 2022. It is time to finally end these extra layers of government. I thank you and urge a yes vote.
Thank you. Kelly Curtis. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Cooter and committee members. I am Kelly Curtis, Kirkland City Council member and a former member of the Houghton Community Council. The existence of the Houghton Community Council creates an imbalance in Kirkland. The HCC was formed in 1968. Since then, numerous housing and land use laws have passed that make these bodies obsolete. No single neighborhood should have the ability to say citywide policies and state growth targets do not apply to them. The veto authority has been used and has citywide impacts. The HCC vetoed our 2020 missing middle housing code after years of citywide community engagement and adoption of our Kirkland Housing Strategy Plan. The time to sunset municipal corporations is now. Kirkland will begin our work on our 2044 comprehensive plan this year. If the HCC remains in existence, it will have a decades-long impact on the development and compliance of our comprehensive plan. Proponents will say that they testify about the good things the HCC has accomplished. But remember, any accomplishments are Kirkland City Council actions that they did not veto. If sunsetted, Houghton residents will continue to have representation through their own neighborhood association, in addition to our usual channels of public engagement. I will leave you with one more comment. Since 1980 through 2010, we have successfully integrated 50,000 new residents in Kirkland without any new community councils. Please sunset these community corporations today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Sweet.
Good morning again, Chair Cooter, Ranking Member Fortunato, and members of the committee. I'm Penny Sweet, Mayor of the City of Kirkland, and I'm proud to say that I'm speaking on behalf of the full Kirkland City Council in support of House Bill 1769. Kirkland, like so many cities in the state of Washington, has struggled over the past year with issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging for all members of our community. We are working toward a Kirkland where all community voices matter and all voices have equal representation. And as long as these community councils exist, that will never be the case. The HCC creates two Kirklands, one within the HCC jurisdiction where voices have more say and votes carry more weight, and the other comprising everyone else in Kirkland. The fact that a council that represents less than 10% of Kirkland has the authority to veto land use and zoning decisions of the Kirkland City Council is a demonstration of structural inequity. Continuing to operate under such a system of jurisdictional duplication will result in the responsibility for the creation of more affordable housing being pushed out to other neighborhoods and nearby cities. No one neighborhood should be able to unilaterally say that citywide policies do not apply to them. No one neighborhood should have more rights and privileges than others. House Bill 1769 is about the equality of all residents. It's time for us to become one Kirkland. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for this panel? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to thank you for your testimony. And before we go to Karen, Madam Vice Chair, would you call up the next panel? Madam Vice Chair, would you call up the next panel, please?
Yes, thank you. Next, we'll have Beverly Marcus, Jeannie Jager, and Chris Randalls. And after that, we'll have John Kapler and Bal Simon and Chio Lai.
All right, Karen, please turn on your camera and please begin. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm on cell phone. I haven't done it.
Yeah. Yes, that's fine. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me to speak to this bill, against this bill this morning. I'm Karen Levinson with GMA Advocates. I first want to say that Houghton, I've never seen Houghton push any of its responsibility to other areas of the city. And I've only seen veto used when Kirkland doesn't provide the data that Houghton has asked them for, like traffic impacts. They just didn't provide the data. Or if Kirkland is violating its own comprehensive plan or its developmental regulations. So in spite of what you may have heard, the census data, which is real facts, prove that Houghton's council has outperformed the rest of Kirkland in achieving state growth targets. The Houghton community has far more people living in multifamily and more affordable units than the rest of Kirkland. We have the only transit-oriented development in Kirkland where we have the lowest rent in the whole city. Here, 25% of the residents were formerly homeless. HB 1769 has been a frequent flyer in the House of Representatives. The first time it was House Bill 1812. It passed unanimously on friendly turf in a short session. The second time it was House Bill 2610 and it passed with a split vote, again in a short session. There's never been a companion bill and it has never passed any Senate committee. The prior Senate committees had more Democrats than Republicans and included senators from two of your districts, 32 and 49. Senators in the committee told Rep. Springer that the state should not be interfering. Kirkland offered the community council as an inducement, a deal maker, so that the city of Houghton would agree to consolidate. Doesn't Section 23 of our Constitution disallow legislative interference? Should the Republicans say it's okay for local governments to renege on agreements with other local governments? Should Democrats say it's okay for local governments to weasel out of agreements with the tribes? Wouldn't this be a dire warning to communities that are already fearful of annexations? I ask for a do not pass, and we ask for the following amendments. The bill starts with a bizarre term of existence, 4 years or 30 days. This should be really clarified. The bill should treat both parties equally and fairly. If one party can withdraw, the second party should also have an easy exit.
Karen, excuse me 1 second. Would you mind sending us your proposed? I think you did already, but if you're adding to that list, if you wouldn't mind doing that in the interest of time. We have a lot of people who also wish to testify on the bill, and we're happy to take a look at those proposed changes.
Right, I will do that, but it shouldn't kick people out of their terms after they spent all the money campaigning. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today. Larry Toadley, I hope I pronounced that right. If not, please correct me and welcome.
You did. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Cooter and committee members. I'm Larry Toadley of Kirkland. I serve on the Houghton Community Council, and I'm opposed to House Bill 1769. CMCs do not impede implementation of housing or land use policies of the Growth Management Act. The community councils must fully comply with all state laws, including the GMA. The Houghton Community Council is charged with assuring that projects and policies align with the GMA and the city's adopted comprehensive plan in our 3 neighborhoods totaling approximately 8,000 residents. The comprehensive plan was developed with extensive public input, a requirement of the GMA. The Community Council knows their community and builds on that value. Disapproval by the Houghton Community Council generally is due to lack of adequate information and analysis provided by the city, or when a proposal is in direct conflict with the adopted plans. The Houghton Community Council has been very open and transparent in its limited use of disapproval, which provides for possible revisions and revisiting of specific topics. Everyone in Kirkland still has one bite of the apple, just as it did when it was still the town of Houghton. We each had one say on land use measures, and that was a primary consideration of the merger of the 2 cities in 1968 and is still today. I am requesting that you vote do not pass as the senators have voted in the prior sessions. If the community councils are terminated in 30 days, as the bill is currently written, projects in the development pipeline will need to go back to square one and be reassessed. This will add costs and delay the projects. No matter what your eventual vote, this bill should be amended to extend the sunset provisions until December 31, 2025. That would honor the November 2021 vote of the people under the terms in place at the time of that election and provide time to establish a smooth transition period for the cities, businesses, developers, and residents. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And do we have any questions for this panel? I don't see Mr. Whitney here. If he does show up, please let me know. We can make sure he gets up and has an opportunity to.
I believe he's traveling.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Then thank you very much for your testimony. We're going to move next to the next panel. Beverly Marcus, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Chair Cooter and committee members. I'm Beverly Marcus, and I'm testifying in support of HB 1769. I live in downtown Kirkland. I was shocked to recently learn about the land use veto power of the Houghton Community Council, which represents just 10% of Kirklanders. I live in the other 90%. The HCC's unique power affects housing and services in all Kirkland neighborhoods, yet my neighborhood has no such power. This is undemocratic and unfair. The Kirkland City Council is the local governing body that represents all Kirklanders. All Kirklanders can vote for the City Council, unlike the case with the HCC. The state legislature created these antiquated, unfair councils over a half century ago, and it's time for the legislature to end them. Thank you, and please move this vote forward.
Thank you. Jenny Yeager, welcome.
Thank you, Chair and committee. I am Jenny Yeager, a Kirkland resident without a vote. I support HB 1769. It has a broad base of support. I'd like to call your attention to an endorsement letter in your inboxes now from Bryce Yaden of FutureWise, with sign-ons from over 60 organizations and civic leaders. Civic leaders sign-ons have included mayors of Bellevue, Bothell, Redmond, Kirkland, and Kenmore, numerous Eastside City Council members from Bellevue to Issaquah, a former superintendent of Lake Washington School District, and even several former HCC members. Statewide organizations signed, such as Association of Washington Cities, ACLU of Washington, League of Women Voters of Washington, Fix Democracy First, numerous housing-focused organizations, the Urbanist, Sightline Institute, and Washington Business Properties Association. Eastside organizations signed on, such as Bellevue Chamber, Northwest University, Indivisible Eastside, Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish counties, and many more. So please check your inboxes for that letter from Bryce Yaden of FutureWise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Chris Randalls.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cooter and committee members. My name is Chris Randalls, and I'm a resident of the East Bellevue Community Council that is testifying in support of HB 1769. A little bit of background, I am a low-income renter who has lived in the Lake Hills neighborhood at Bellevue for the last 7 years now. And for a while, as you all know, the state's been working on legislation that would facilitate more affordable housing for renters like me. One of these laws was just passed in 2020 and had to do with reducing affordable housing costs by lowering parking requirements for new developments and near frequent transit. And it required action at the local level to comply. The city of Bellevue, to its credit, acted swiftly and complied with the statute, but the members of the EBCC used their veto power, which I'll note is the only voting power they have, to reject the mandate, which put them at odds with state law and required Bellevue taxpayers to foot their tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees before they ultimately were required to comply. The EBCC does not and historically has not represented the interests of low-income residents like myself who want and really need more affordable housing in our communities. So I urge you to support 1769 today, and I want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. And do we have any questions for this panel? And I am not seeing any, so I'm going to thank you for your testimony. And before we move to Baylor Simon, Madam Vice Chair, would you call up the next panel?
Yeah, the next panel is Cynthia Stewart. Then we've got Lynn Robinson and Bryce Yaden. And after that, we'll have Eckhart Schmidt, Steve Feller, and Steve Kasner.
All right, Baylor Simon, welcome. Turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and please begin.
My name is Bal Simon. I live in the Lake Hills area in Bellevue. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this bill, and I'm against it. I get that the city can dissolve this community councils, but the way it's being done is abysmal. The way it should have been done was to say 4 years ago that the CCs would be retired after the current term. Then there would have been no vote in 2021, but you allowed a vote. And by huge majorities of those entitled to vote, we chose to keep the CCs going. Now you want to undo our vote. If you can do it with this, you can do it with most anything. Is that the lesson you really want to communicate to the voters? That our votes are meaningful only by grace of the state government. The community councils give the citizens the ability to meet city governments on a footing that the cities have to recognize. Proponents of the bills say that the 2 CCs give us special rights. Well, that specialness could be handled another way. Create a new process not related to annexation that gives every community a community council. But if you want to take away the community councils, you should pair this with an action that gives citizens a way of getting the city's focused attention. Something that gives citizens a reasonable shot at fighting City Hall when a city acts in a callous or overreaching way. My understanding of the bill is that it does nothing to make cities more responsive to citizen or resident concerns. That's what community councils do. My experience provides a good example. Without the East Bellevue Community Council, the city of Bellevue would have steamrolled over the people in my neighborhood. This refers to the move of the Puesta del Sol school into our neighborhood at the end of the street on which I live. The city of Bellevue was required to give notice to the people on my street, notifying us that there was going to be a school project, but Bellevue didn't do that. By the time I heard about the project, all the plans had already been laid out. We had zero input into them. At the first meeting I went to, we were told that the school was going to be requiring us to lose all our street parking, and we'd also have to accept increased traffic on our street. We objected, the city didn't care. Fortunately, we had the EBCC. They told the city that it had to play fairly with us or it would veto their plans. That got the city's attention. And finally, they set up a working meeting that everyone could meet, including people from the city, from the school district, the parents and administrators of Puesta del Sol, and the neighbors on my street. And over several hours, we had a second similar meeting. We worked out a good compromise. No one got everything they wanted, but it was a good deal, and it would not have happened without the EBCC. Maybe the state can come up with another way to make that happen, but as it stands, you're basically telling citizens that when cities come to their doorsteps with plans that treat them unfairly, they need to just get out of the way and take whatever they get. I don't think that's fair, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. John Kapler. Welcome, John. You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to speak. My name is John Kapler. I live in Kirkland. I'm on the Houghton Community Council. The Houghton Community Council is meeting the comprehensive plan for the city of Kirkland. It is meeting the Growth Management Act targets. It is meeting the GMA. To say otherwise is very misleading. We have missing middle housing typology in the Houghton Community Council area. We have duplexes, we have triplexes, we have cottages. Our cottages actually are smaller than the cottages in the balance of Kirkland, therefore more affordable. So to say anything other than that is a mischaracterization of what we have in our particular jurisdiction. Everybody does have one bite of the apple. And for land use regulation, the people within the Houghton Community Council area, they have the Houghton Community Council as their one authority. Part of what our responsibility is to look after our neighborhoods as to how they fit in the comprehensive plan up to the state level meeting Growth Management Act. We are meeting the Growth Management Act targets. So to say that we're not is simply a mischaracterization. The people speaking against the Houghton Community Council are the people focused on the missing middle typology of housing, and they're not even in the Houghton area other than a few people that have stated they are. We need local representation. And for people, citizens to vote in a particular area, to have the state take their vote away is very, it's hurtful to people to trust their government. We need to put that trust back in their government and let the people's vote count. So I am not supportive of this bill, and I hope you don't pass it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for this panel? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to thank you for your testimony, and we'll move to the next panel. Cynthia Stewart. Welcome, Cynthia. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Chair Kuderer and committee. My name is Cynthia Stewart. I represent the League of Women Voters of Washington. As a longtime supporter of the Growth Management Act, affordable housing, and of democracy, the League supports House Bill 1769. This bill would remove the provisions in state law that allow community councils formed prior to an annexation to veto city land use actions post-annexation. This authorization was enabled decades ago as an incentive to communities to accept incorporations and annexations. That statute is now archaic and inappropriate. It allows the community councils formed back then, a small subset of a city, to independently veto land use decisions made by the city planning commissions and councils that would otherwise apply within the boundaries of the council's jurisdiction. This creates discrepancies within cities between land uses, environmental regulations, and more. It creates inequitable policy and is also terribly undemocratic. The undemocratic nature and inequity of the current law should override the fact that certain members were just elected. House Bill 1769 would modify these provisions and limit the jurisdictions of these councils. We urge your approval of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Robinson, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. Well, good morning, Chair Kuderer, Vice Chair Doss, and committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of House Bill 1769. Although I serve on the Bellevue City Council and have been for the last 9 years, today I speak as a Bellevue resident. Our neighborhoods are well represented by the Bellevue City Council. Each of the 7 Bellevue City Council members serves the entire Bellevue City at large. They are voted in by all Bellevue residents, including the residents served by the East Bellevue Community Council. But East Bellevue Community Council residents are uniquely allowed double representation. Once as a Bellevue resident and second as an East Bellevue Community Council member. And because of this, they are able to weigh in twice on every issue facing the city. This is not equitable governance. In addition, they get to veto any council land use decision affecting the EBCC region, and oppose they do. As you've heard, they have opposed citing much needed homeless shelters, schools, and utilities. They have tried to avoid implementation of state policy, vital to increasing our city's affordable housing stock, and have cost the city and our residents hundreds of thousands of dollars in staff and legal fees in fruitless opposition of Bellevue City Council decisions. To end this inequitable representation in Bellevue, I very much support passage of House Bill 1769 and its immediate implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bryce Yaden. Welcome, Bryce.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee, Bryce Yaden here today, again, on behalf of FeatureWise, testifying in support of House Bill 1769. I do want to bring you back to last year where you all passed House Bill 1220 that updated the housing element of the Growth Management Act. The bill required a couple of different things, and I'll get to why this matters, is it requires there's greater planning for housing at all income levels and all types. And this includes a framework for citing emergency shelter and emergency housing. We are concerned as we come up on the updates to the comprehensive plans in the next couple of years that we could see issues within both of these jurisdictions that continue to have these municipal corporations. As is mentioned before, the current law allows for these two areas to veto land use changes that are required under the recent passage of this legislation. I do want to highlight that if an appeal occurs due to a veto, the city is on the hook to pay legal fees for both the city's position as well as the municipal corporations. So they're actually paying for themselves and the organization that they are appealing. This puts taxpayers of the city should not be on the hook for the legal fees of both organizations. In addition, this timely legislation, as I mentioned before, we are coming up on the planning process, which is going to guide housing for the next decade or so. And so we believe that the next 30 days, once this bill passes, is key to making sure that House Bill 1220 and other pieces of land use legislation that are before you move forward. I also want to say that under the GMA, annexation is encouraged for cities within the urban growth boundary, and we currently don't incentivize the creation of new municipal corporations for annexation. We believe everybody should be on equal footing. So FeatureWise supports this piece of legislation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Fortunato has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mayor Robinson, the problem I'm having with this particular piece of legislation is, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, a neighborhood was offered a deal to be annexed into the city years ago. They said, if you get annexed into the city, you will get these rights as a neighborhood, a community council. And included in that deal was the ability to have these legal fees paid for by the city if there's a disagreement. So my problem with this is a deal's a deal. And now all of a sudden people are testifying that they don't like the deal. And now they want the state to intervene to change it as opposed to having that within the city.
Well, I believe the deal was based on a law that said that this should only last for 4 years and should be used as a transition piece as a neighborhood is annexed into the city and provide that neighborhood extra representation for 4 years. The original law that allows a community council to exist and have the privileges that it does was designed to be used in a short-term way, not for permanent. So this is.
And if I could follow up briefly, would you be opposed to just allowing the existing terms of the council members to expire? When those expire, the council goes away? Because as I understand it, some members have been just elected and they'd be in the middle of their term, it would just be abolished.
It's very inequitable to have two bites of the apple that this particular group of people have. And the members of the community councils can run for city council. They have this experience under their belt. We've seen community council members be elected to city council in the past. So I think that's a good path for them. I do not want to extend this any further.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. And I don't see any other questions. I want to thank this panel for their testimony, and we're going to move next to Eckhart Schmidt. Welcome, Mr. Schmidt, and please begin. You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, I have unmuted. Good morning, Chair Kudrow and members of the committee. My name is Eckhart Schmidt and I live in Lake Hills within the jurisdiction of East Bellevue Community Council. I have lived in this Lake Hills neighborhood of the city of Bellevue for 55 years, and I have been a witness of the important work that was done by the Community Council for the benefit of our neighborhood. The issues decided by the Community Council are strictly local and do not impede any of the citywide developments. I am concerned that House Bill 1769 will eliminate our local representation in deciding developments which are incompatible with our residential neighborhood. Every 4 years, we voters in the precinct of East Bellevue Community Council have repeatedly and overwhelmingly approved the continuation of the Community Council. The decision for or against continuation of our community councils must remain up to the voters residing in these areas, not state representatives from other parts of the state of Washington. Please vote against House Bill 1769 in its original form and preserve our community councils. We are here and we want to live in a livable neighborhood. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your time. And before we go to Mr. Kasner, Senator Doss, would you please call up the next panel?
Yes, our last panel is Joe Tovar, Philip Allen, and Zeeland Zhang.
All right. Welcome, Steve. Good to see you.
Thank you, Chair Cruder, Ranking Member Fortunato, and members of this committee. This is the third time in the last 10 years I've come before this committee to discuss this issue as it came over from the House. The amount of people who've signed into this bill is overwhelmingly more than any bill that I've seen in the legislature this year. For the last 15 years as a volunteer, I've been part of the East Bellevue Community Council. And to follow up on Senator Fortunato's comments, 30 days after Sindai is going to be sometime in May and June. All 12 of us were elected in November 2021. And what we need to understand today is you've seen some of the possible amendments. The other discussion, if this passes, the members of Houghton and the East Bellevue Community Council should be given the opportunity to leave their respective cities. Because if you look at the history, we came into the city because of these things. The things that the East Bellevue Community Council is accused of, the legislature decided that we would, within a quarter mile of transit, that we would have to do that. Bellevue said, let's go a half mile from transit. Well, 12% of the residents in my area are disabled, and they could not make it that half mile. After we were presented a bill to go to a quarter mile, which is what the legislature agreed to, we passed it. So I come before you today that this is the third strike. 1769 should die in the House and Local Government Committee. And if it doesn't, it must be amended that we finish our current terms, or that we were put up for a vote and that we could leave the city if the voters of East Bellevue choose to do that. Thank you very much for your time. Please do not pass this very bad legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you please identify yourself for the record? I mean, I know who you are, but.
No, I did say Steve Kasner from the East Bellevue Community Council at the beginning of my targets, but and for my entire career, I have empowered marginalized voices to have a say in Bellevue, and I hope I can get to continue to do that. Thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day.
All right, thank you too. Do we have any questions for this panel? I'm not seeing any, so we'll go into our last panel. And we have Joe Tovar. Welcome, Joe. Welcome back.
Thank you, Senator, members of the committee. Joe Tovar. I'm here on behalf of the American Planning Association. We agree with all the comments that have been made by people who support this bill. It is anachronism. It is unfair inherently. Two things I will add, though, from my perspective. One is I'm the former planning director for the city of Kirkland, so I attended over 1,000 meetings in my time in Kirkland, many of them with the Houghton Community Council. honest people, sincere people doing the best they could to serve the mission as they saw it. Unfortunately, that mission is exclusionary and separatist. Two other things about transition. When I was in Kirkland, at one point, 6 of the 7 city council members were from Houghton. So they know how to run for city council. They have been elected to city council. It was a tool to transition Houghton into the larger city of Kirkland. That has happened. Mission accomplished. Second thing is, I probably have the distinction of being the only person who is a homeowner and a taxpayer in both Bellevue and Kirkland for a total of 24 years. My beef as a person was taxation without representation. I was paying for the functions of these 2 units of government over which I had no vote, no control. I didn't get to decide who was on those councils. That is fundamentally un-American, unfair, I think unconstitutional. One more good reason to sunset these community councils. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Philip Allen. Welcome, Philip.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Ranking Member Fortunato, Distinguished Senate Housing and Local Government Committee, my name is Phil Allen. I am a resident of Kirkland. I'm here to oppose House Bill 1769. It is my belief that the moral, just, Enlightenment era outcome of this bill, if passed as written, is the immediate reconstitution of the community municipal corporations as independent cities. These cities would exist without a budget, without an executive or judicial branch, without employees, and without the ability to provide the mandatory services of government within these newly recreated municipal boundaries. I will submit to you a written justification of this for the committee's consideration. The heart of the issue is that the residents of the community municipal corporations have refused on many ballots to pool their rights to final control over land use with the consolidated cities. Therefore, when the community municipal corporation is dissolved without its consent, the result is that the unpooled rights reconstitute the cities. The state of Washington deems that community municipal corporations are to be dissolved. There is a way to reconcile the unconsolidated rights of the people. This involves a clear procedure for a ballot measure and a process to handle out both a vote of for and against. For might indicate consolidate permanently, and against might be move to a separate city at a reasonable pace, which is likewise outlined in the document that I will send you. The United States has always aspired to respect the rights of its residents, and in recent years has done an increasingly better job at reaching for that aspiration. Let us continue on that trend to improvement and to reach that aspiration. I therefore stand in opposition to House Bill 1769 as it is currently written and ask that you vote do not pass. I welcome questions and look forward to working with the bill sponsors, committee members, or their respective staffs. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for this panel? I am not seeing any, so I'm going to thank you both for your testimony today. Thank all the testifiers. It was a very enlightening discussion and very helpful to the committee members. And with that, I'm going to close the public hearing on House Bill 1769, and seeing that we have no further business, we are adjourned.